Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Breakdown. I'm Jeff Straw here at Pyramind with Erin Barra. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me again.
Again, I'm glad you mentioned that. So
Yeah.
you were here a couple years ago for an elite session.
Yes.
Right, which you guys can watch at the link below, right there. We'll put it right there. All right, sweet. And instead of you doing another big public event, I wanted to have you come in and do something private and a nice little intimate performance. So thanks.
You're welcome.
We're going to talk a little bit about the performance in a second. And but first I want to talk about the track. It's called Broken Banks, and the original version is from your album.
Undefined is the name of the album. It's a song I wrote probably 3 or 4 years ago. We were on tour and we were routing up the West Coast, and we were supposed to be entering Canada, and we were denied entrance, and so I had a few extra days and just decided to write. So it was a song seed that I had from listening to a poet at a slam poetry event. I was really inspired by this one lyric that was, "And here I lay my worn river stones at your broken banks," which actually is the lyric for the chorus. And so I kind of wrote the song around that inspirational moment that I had.
I love it. Love it. So we were talking a little bit earlier that your sense of time is really, unique, I'll say, right? As I'm sitting here listening to you without the track behind you, just you singing, I was feeling the beat in a different place, right? So you've got this like really cool, funky sense of time. Talk a little bit about, is that just your style? Or when you're sitting down to write, do you consciously kind of make choices like that?
In this instance, yes, it was a very conscious decision. I think generally I like to pull on the rhythm. So like when I sing, I'm very behind. And when people get stems from my albums and they try to warp them, it's a very laborious task. And people give up. They're like, hey, I couldn't warp your vocal. I couldn't do it. But in this instance, it is this juxtaposition of 3-bar phrases with 4-bar phrases. So every 12 bars, they line up again. So it has this really unstable feeling until it finally lines up, and then it immediately kind of retracts itself again. And as a songwriter, I'm always looking for a deeper connection between the concepts behind the lyrics and the harmonies and the melodies and the rhythms and how they play together. So the song is about somebody who has been through a lot, and they're just learning to trust somebody again. So although they're stable and they do meet up every 12 bars, they're still generally unstable. So I used the rhythmic displacement to kind of underline and support my concept for the song.
Nice. So play us a little bit of that in the beginning, kind of where the beat drops in.
Sure.
And I know that your arrangement was somewhat created on the fly, right, for the live performance. But once your vocals come in, you are pretty set.
I'm just launching scenes at that point.
Okay.
Yes. So if I launch this here, you can see that here is this 3-bar loop. 1, 2, 3 bars here. And this is sliced MIDI. But this is 32. Actually, 32 bars? Yeah. So even if actually I'll illustrate this a little bit better by looping this section. 1, 2, loop.
So the guitar phrase feels...
It's
like
always kind of moving ahead, yeah. And then I have many different versions of this. And actually, in this first chorus, I have a follow action of after 15 bars. So the chorus actually took out a measure from the chorus as well. So instead of feeling the full 16, I removed measures from certain sections as well. So there's a lot of like rhythmic play.
Got it. So those are obviously conscious songwriting decisions you make. How does this version differ from the studio version? Like what elements did you take that we're listening to now, and then what did you recreate for like these live sets?
So all the guitars are from the original session, and we recorded that at Chung King Studios in New York before they closed. R.I.P. And it was all really analog, that process. And so I took the stems from the guitar. So there's a distorted stem, and then there's a rhythmic stem.
Pull those up, would you?
Sure.
Because the guitar playing is super nice.
So you can see these are the actual stems of the entire thing, and I just chopped parts of it, so we're not only listening to the 16 bars here originally, or 15 for this chorus. And then same thing with the rhythm guitars too. So each section we're just hearing a different part of that file, which is pulled directly from the record. And then I actually sliced up another part of the guitar track straight to this drum rack here. So you can see as I move through the different slices, it's just different chords.
And then you're using those in the performance, right?
I did. I looped the original intro clip is happening live.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the rest of them are pre-programmed.
Got it. But the
it's
first
MIDI.
time through, you're nailing it live.
I'm playing it. Yep. 8-bar phrase. It has a pickup, so I put it on fixed length, and it just continues to loop. It's quantizing as I record. So that's the stuff that came live from the record.
Okay.
And then everything else, actually the sleigh bells, that's the sleigh bells, me playing them. And then there's some oohs also. I forgot, this is from the record also, or is this stem here?
So the reason we high-fived is Erin played the sleigh bells on the original record.
Yes,
I was
I did.
asking, like, I didn't know. I'm like, are you the guitar player? And he said, no, I'm not the guitar player, but I did play the
But
sleigh
that's me
bells.
on the sleigh bells.
So, talking about the original recording process for the record, like moving away from this for a second, you mentioned that you were the producer for the album. You didn't really engineer. So, you were working with a house engineer there at Chungking.
So his name is Ari Raskin, and I would consider him a co-producer on pretty much everything I've done, because the engineering process has such a huge impact on everything else. I don't think you can really separate them at some juncture. And I've been working with Ari. He originally was the house engineer at Chungking, and Chungking is closed and then reopened a few times, actually. So when that studio left, we continued to work with each other. So he was really familiar with the space. As a house engineer would be, but he and I have a long-standing rapport working together.
And that's important.
Absolutely, especially when you're
To have comfort.
making records, you got to have the vibe right.
Yeah. Cool. So then what about the drums? Is this something a loop you just grabbed? Did you create these with a drum rack? What did you...
It is a breakbeat. So there's a file called the 300 Greatest Breaks of All Time that many people in the industry have. And it's, it's basically the entire 90s hip-hop music. And so I just found a loop out of 300 that I had and warped it. And yeah, I'm sure this has been used multiple times before. It probably sounds a little bit different because of what I did with the rhythms. But it's probably from some record in the 70s, and I wish I knew exactly what it was, but I don't.
No, it's all good. A lot of people steal breaks and don't know where they're from.
I think that's part of the interesting part of it.
But you made it a 3-bar loop, right?
I did. I reappropriated this and made it my own.
Which really gives it that unsettling feel, right? Because and part of why I wasn't feeling the one where I thought I should is this 3-bar drum loop. It's just a wacky...
I like that when that happens to me.
I do too.
Like, you tricked me.
Yes. And you got to wait for the other... Anyways, that's not me. Cool. All right. So you grabbed a break that you liked. You changed it into a 3-bar loop to kind of give some tension. What else do we have going on here that we want to talk about? You've got your bass parts, and then you've got some kind of chord patterns.
Okay. So I'm playing the bass live here. Actually.
Except you're not.
So in the first part of this, actually inside of this instrument rack, there are 3 different devices. So this kind of brassy... I probably have to launch this here. The sound, is that... So this actually was a sample from a Mellotron.
Okay.
That I used simpler and created a sample instrument based upon like some middle C, or the lowest C that I had. And then I'm just playing it. And that's blended in with this house bass. This looks like operator. And I think that this is just a preset I pulled in because I knew I just wanted something with a little bit more attack. So those 2 sounds together make up my bass sound.
Okay.
And they're automated on the Chain Selector from 0 to 8, or 1 to 8. And then I have some automation written into this clip here that actually switches it so that now I'm on the Microtron itself. It's originally a Mellotron. But it's called Microtron in this instance. And so once I launch that scene, the chain selector jumps into action, switches over to this other part of the chain, and then I'm playing the mellotron.
Like first time through, you played that live too, right?
All the bass stuff is live.
Oh,
That's
okay.
me playing.
That's throughout.
Yeah.
All right, so talk some about that then. Like, why that decision? Are you super comfy as a left-handed piano player originally? Is that where you personally like to then have that low end on your left hand while you're singing?
This is an interesting story. So when I was
knew
about when I was about 19 years old, I was holding a piece of glass, a really large piece of glass, and it shattered in my hand. And I have this pretty large scar across my palm here, and I severed the tendon on my right hand, on my thumb.
Okay.
And I was in music school at the time, and I got really great with my left hand as a result of this pretty terrible accident that happened. So I do feel very comfortable using my left hand, yes. But also, I feel like every time you try to pick a song and to integrate a tech component of it live on stage, you really have to pick and choose what it is you're doing. And so I don't want to pull out every trick that I have for every single song, because ultimately I have a long set and I want to show a little bit of something in each section. So sometimes I really rely on my instrumental skill set, and then other times I do more vocal effects processing. So for this song, I really felt like with the rhythmic displacement and just focusing on singing, because it's a really lyric heavy song with the rhythmic complexity, that the thing that I could really handle was playing the bass. So I then just decided to add that track in, and that's the live element. It's all alive, but this was something for me to showcase for this song.
And so throughout your set, what are some of the other decisions? What do you like to play leads on some things? Do you use the push at all for tonal components?
Absolutely.
So it just depends song to song, right? I
try to make every song unique, and I think that less is more. So you just pick one thing, for each time. So I start the set off by I'm in 64 pad mode on the push, and it's just this gigantic sampler, and I'm actually finger drumming all the harmonic components and the rhythmic components. Nice. Just with my hands. So it's very visual. It's definitively something that I'm doing, because a lot of times your audience doesn't know. So I kind of start off with check this out. This is me being in control.
Right.
And then I switch in and I'll do a lot of live looping, vocal looping, and then I'll go in here where it's more playing. I'll do some sampling with the crossfader. So kind of I have another song that integrates more of a DJ component. And then inside of the transitions from song to song, I do a lot of live sample manipulation. So I try to just pick and choose my moments to do everything throughout a longer overarching set.
The Max for Live stuff. Let's talk a little bit about troubleshooting, right? So before you guys joined us, we were having some issues, and I think it's you brought this up, and I think it's really worth talking about, because God knows that panic that sets in when you're why isn't my rig working the way it should work? My set starts in.
Yeah, or it was supposed to start 10 minutes ago.
Exactly, and things are still awry. So clearly every problem is different. But if there's any tips you can give people to
Well, my tip to anybody who's in a sticky situation, I think this is on stage or off stage. I mean, in studio sessions, time is money. So I think the first thing you have to do is chill out, because you can't fix a problem when you're upset, because then you can't see the many possibilities of something that could be affecting whatever the problem is. So, taking deep breaths, I think, is probably the most important thing to do, is just try to relax. And it's going to get fixed. You also just have to understand that, too. This will get fixed, whether you're fixing it, somebody around you can help you fix it, whatever you got to do. I've cultivated some things that I do just to make me feel better. I have a clone of my computer on a drive that I could boot up from another computer, just in case it's a computer issue. Mm-hmm. I have extra cables that I can swap out in case it's a cable issue.
That speaks to being prepared. That's not in the moment stuff.
Be prepared.
But that's you taking the time to set up and come.
Multiple adapters. If I had $1 for every time I saved somebody else's ass on stage, I'd probably have $40.
Back in the vinyl days, you'd be surprised how many guys didn't bring their own needles. What do you mean you don't have needles?
Yeah. Okay, well, Or I've seen people's non-powered USB hubs like spark and start on fire. And then I'm like, oh, I have a powered one you could use. You know, so I think over time I've like, I know what works. I know how my stuff works. I know how the technology works. But it wasn't always like that, especially when I started. And when I was touring, I did not know what was happening the majority of the time. And I think a lot of people don't want to admit that kind of stuff.
Right.
You know, but I didn't. I was making music, and I didn't care about what was happening as long as it worked. So by going through the process of being on tour and having to troubleshoot night after night all the time, it doesn't even faze me. Real calm.
Nice.
Just breathe deep breaths and open up a web browser and start Googling something if you don't know what the answer is.
Right. And then shut down your Max for Live plugins.
Yeah. Don't run the dual harmonizer live on stage.
You heard it here first. Yeah, because it was giving us this weird latency issue on the vocals, right? And
Which
that's
is strange.
You can't sing and not hear your voice in time, right? So glad we worked it out. I thought your performance was marvelous.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Is there anything else around the track that you want to play? Little sections you want to play in solo? Like I love those guitar parts. Love to hear a little stripe of that with the lead.
They're so warm, aren't they?
They're really nice.
I don't want this to get all crazy, but we'll just... So, I mean, it's a stereo signal, but I think originally actually it was 3 different microphones on a single amp, and then we may have reamped it as well. So this is a blend, and there was a lot of labor that went into getting these guitar tones, and actually we did the guitar player really wanted to be in control of what was happening, and so I gave him the option of doing it at home by himself first, and he had some good ideas, but it just didn't sound good enough. So this is actually a second day that we did with more microphones, and it took a long time to bring that warmth out. But I think that the guitars and the sleigh bells, like those analog sources, through the nice pre's with the good microphones, run through like an actual board, you can really feel the warmth in it.
Yeah.
So I like to combine digital textures and analog textures together to kind of round it out. Because what I'm doing is a very analog application. You know, it's a singer-songwriter paradigm inside of a digital realm. So I like to combine as much as I can and, you know, create hybrid sounds.
Do you, when you tour live, are you playing with this guitar player or any of the guys that were on this record with you? Are they session players? What's your live scenario like these days?
It's changed all of the time.
Okay.
During this record, the guitar player that's on this record was touring with me. It was a guitar player and a drummer, and then me. I was playing.
Names?
Nick D'Agostino is on the drums, and Craig Broadhead is this guitar player. And Craig plays in a very popular band called Turquoise now. He left me for Turquoise, and it was a trio, and I was playing bass with my left hand. It's like a little fatty, and I had a Nord, so I was playing things with my right hand chords, and then I had, at the time it was an APC 40. Oh, and then we moved to push, yeah, so I've done trios, I've done full bands, and then I moved to a duo. It was just me and another person who had a very complementary skill set, keyboard, forward, electronic, sound designer. And then I do a lot of solo shows just because it's, I mean, everything you see here in front of me, I can do an entire show with just these things, and they fit into my backpack. So that's kind of where it's evolved, and it's almost out of just sheer necessity from overhead and traveling. So I can kind of expand and contract depending on what it is I want to be doing. Now that I've moved more behind the scenes and educating, I don't perform as much in a traditional sense. I perform more in class. I probably perform 6 times a semester per section, so I'm exponentially performing. But it's just in a completely different way, and I feel less pressure, and I enjoy my performances more now that I'm not taking myself so seriously.
And they already bought tickets to come to class, right? You don't have to worry about selling tickets at the club.
That's true.
It's kind of nice.
Yeah, and then we can really talk about it. It's more exciting to me to do things like this. Like, I love performing and I love sharing, my feelings, but really the ideas behind them I find to be equally as exciting.
Cool. Well, thanks again for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel here. Again, we'll just do this. We'll put the button right there. So I'm Jeff Straw, again with Erin Barra. Thanks again so much
Thank you so much
for joining us. Have
My
a
pleasure.
lovely trip back to Boston.
Thank you.
And we'll see you guys in the next episode.